Whenever you do a live video, it's like you're not sure if the camera's on yet or not. And it's like, yeah, hey, here we go. Look, it's everybody. All right, so what's up? I'm Eric, and I'm a real estate investor and broker, and this is my good friend, Nancy Wasden.
Hi. I'm Nancy. I'm an attorney. I do closings and I do probate and wills and estates. Perfection.
Yeah, so I guess just kind of talking about probate, I guess we should define it first. So I feel like...
What is probate? I have some things that it's not
or
your
should we
friends.
buy some time to see if people want to like log on and catch it? I mean, I'll keep it on my... I want to fix my hair. Because I'm just going to be in a constant state of like getting my hair to do what I want to do. But I feel like I've just been like sweating. What's up, Taylor? You're not, shouldn't you be at an appointment right now, bro? It's like, I thought you had an appointment.
Well, your friends had some funny things, what they thought it was. We could dispel some myths if you want.
You know what? Let's define it first, and then we can play with play with some of that stuff.
Probate is the process of proving a will. It's actually Latin for to prove, or the process of proving a will. So if you have some documents that look like a last will and testament, sound like a last will and testament, they might even smell like a last will and testament because they're old. Then you go to the probate court.
It's been in a drawer for a long time.
They've been in a drawer, yeah, like 10, 20 or more years. They're on like that old school thin paper or whatever. Mm-hmm. Then you take that to the court in the county of where the person passed away, their domicile, as it were, and you say, this is a will of someone that I know has passed away. And usually you're the nominated executor, or you know that person, or you're a backup executor, and you file a petition to prove the will that way.
Is it usually the executor that does that?
Well, usually the person who...
That's assuming there's a will.
Yeah, that's assuming there's a will.
If not, then you need to have an administrator placed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how would that be initiated?
Well, what you do is when you know someone's passed away, you look at their stuff. You look in their stuff and try to find...
Well, we're probably going to be rooting through their taking things anyway. Yeah. So...
Yes. So you look for the will, right, and you find what's hopefully the original. Sometimes a copy can work. And that's when you read it and see who the executor is.
And in some states, and we should say that none of this is legal advice, and especially if you're in a different state other than Georgia, because are you licensed?
Licensed only in Georgia. Okay. So this is Georgia stuff only.
And then certainly you'd want to find out what else is going on.
This is general information?
Yeah. Yes. General information, you need to talk to an attorney near where you are. Right. What's up, Brad? He's in New Jersey.
Oh, all right.
He may not be right now, but anyway, where was I going with that? I don't know.
Administration.
Administrator.
Looking through people's stuff.
So you're rooting through their things. You don't find a will, but I know exactly what he would want or she would want to have happen. So of course I go to the court.
Well, everybody has a will or an estate plan written for them in the Georgia Code. Okay. So you have what's called heirs at law, which is the heirs that are written into the specific code section for defining who the heirs are if you don't have a will to say how you'd like it to go.
I remember, I'm sorry to interrupt.
One really interesting factoid there is that a lot of people think their spouse gets everything automatically, but the statute actually says that you split equally between your spouse and your children. There's some exceptions to that. There's a lot of things around that, but that's something a lot of people don't know, and they don't necessarily want it to go that way. They want their spouse to get everything first, and then only if both of them are gone, roll the kids in. Mm-hmm. So there's that.
Yeah, I know when I was going through, when I was getting my real estate license in California, it was like if there is not a will to determine how things are going to go, it would flow down to children, up to parents, down to grandkids, and then I think like out, and then it goes to like, then it starts going to like first of kin kind of things.
It's all laid out in the statute, and it's spouse, kids, siblings, parents, grandparents. I mean, your lineal descendants are first, and that's when we start searching for the people if we don't have any of those. But that's how those stories happen, where somebody gets a letter from a long lost cousin and they have inheritance they didn't know about somewhere else, because we have to track those people down.
Yeah.
So even if you looked through, they didn't have a will, but you know for sure what they wanted, there's not a whole lot you can do about that because it's already written in who's going to get the stuff and in what proportion.
Yeah, I will tell you, and not to like bring it down too much, although we are talking about real estate, so it's fairly heavy. So it's understandable. But my grandfather did an amazing job of setting everything up. He was like an old military guy, and he was actually in the Army Air Corps. That's like before there was an Air Force, like before it split off. And he, what he did that was pretty awesome is he had everything set up, and he has the lots purchased, like everything selected and purchased. So when he passed away almost 20 years ago, that was all set. And then when my grandmother passed away, his wife, last year, my sister and I were kind of going back and forth texting, and she was like, she's like, I really pretty much only had to select flowers because our papa had selected everything before, like when he had set this up, he set up everything for both of them.
Wow.
And he, I think he may have even done some stuff for us as well.
Oh, wow.
To where like she just had to pretty much select flowers and pay taxes, and that was it.
Nice.
And so yeah, I mean that was pretty dope. So I feel like before we get into the nitty gritty,
sure,
I feel like the first thing is have a plan, tell people your plan, write your plan down.
Right.
So that way, you know, there's not somebody taking advantage of an emotional time in someone else's life, not wanting like your parent or you or whoever it is to be like, well, I'm sure you would want the best for them. I'm sure they would need a 24-karat gold casket or whatever it is.
Right. Well, I will say there's a couple different ways to do estate planning, right? There's no substitute for good estate planning. If you have estate planning, then you go through the probate process. In places like California and Florida, the probate process is very expensive and lengthy and arduous and likes to be avoided. People in those states like to avoid probate in general. It's certainly possible to avoid probate in Georgia. California and Florida are the top two that come to mind.
That seems like the states where, I mean, I feel like a lot of people retire to those states. So
right.
I feel like you should really put things together.
Avoiding probate is what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And you can do a different type of estate planning, which is a living trust. I'm sure you've heard of trust, revocable trust, family trust. Those are different names for the same type of document. And that avoids probate altogether. So if you have a rock solid, I guess, estate plan that includes trust, then you don't have to deal with any of this. And if you need to sell real property, you would be able to do so essentially immediately. Even upon incapacity, the trustee is vested with the powers that we look for in order to sell real property.
Yeah. So and also I believe at least I think I had some clients that the way theirs was set up is the beneficiary had control until it came to a point where they no longer had the capacity to make the decisions, and then the trustee was making the decisions at that point. Is that a real thing, or am I off on?
That sounds correct, but I think your terminology is a smidge off. I think maybe you mean
That is not a surprise.
Just the initial person. Like if I have a trust, I'm the settlor or grantor, which just means creator of a trust. Then I have say-so over all my stuff until I'm incapacitated. And that is either legally determined or determined in the document itself. And then the trust takes over. And if you were my backup trustee, then you would take over upon that point. And a trust also immediately upon death, then the trustee has the powers right away and goes along.
Awesome.
But in order to get those powers, and I should back up and also say that it all flows smoothly only if you have the real estate titled correctly. And that happens frequently when there is a lovely blank deed in the back of the trust binder that never got recorded or isn't titled properly. In Georgia, there's a trust can't really hold a property, so we have to put the trustee on there a certain way.
Yeah, I have a buddy, Joshua, who we used to work together quite a bit, and he always said that I always got like the once in a lifetime weird things, but I got them like once a month.
Oh, nice.
And so like I've had some, but also I feel like it's a good thing because, you know, like smooth seas never created a good skilled sailor. So yeah, so I'm pretty great. But saying that to say this is that having things go wrong, like you know how to like kind of put it back together. And I know that I had some folks and they weren't sure, and this leads into one of the questions I remember from the Facebook thread yesterday. And we can get into the more fun ones, but I did want to touch this one real quick.
Yeah.
Asked, how do you find out who if it's been through probate or not? Because sometimes you talk to people like, I don't know. And what these folks, what had happened with these folks is they had done some things to include other family members in the ownership, and then were trying to change that and had some misunderstandings as to the best way to move forward. So it was some partitioning being done to get you already know based on what I'm telling you. You're like, this is juicier than what you're saying. So anyway, so in the middle of that, one of the parties passed away.
Oh.
So you're like caught in the middle. So it was like I guarantee that is on a law exam somewhere, a question like that, because it was so complicated.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, what we had to do is they had to run title to figure out where it was now. And so I think my suggestion would be, if you're not sure, check the title and see where it's at. Is that what you would say, or is there a better thing to do?
If we want to know if it's been probated at all or dealt with at all, typically the probate process, sadly, is fairly memorable. They're going to remember if they had to run around and get these documents notarized and taken to the court, and if they had the letters issued, and if they still are in possession of those originals, they'll probably remember that. If somehow not, and that other family member has passed away and we're not sure.
Or they weren't the one involved in doing it, but then that person isn't around anymore either, or something like that.
Sometimes it happens. Everybody's dead. So you go, it does. You would go to the county probate court. It's a separate court. It's different than the magistrate or the state or the superior or any of that. Every county in Georgia has one. And it's a public process. So you go to their records. Sometimes they're online. A lot of them in the metro area especially are not. So you would go to the probate court itself, and you could have a clerk help you, or they have computers, not unlike the deed room, where you could look up that way.
Okay. So go to the courthouse and have a clerk or somebody would... Is that going to be the best way to do it?
You can run title, and a title examiner is supposed to do that for you as well. That's part of what they do at the courthouse when they run their search, especially if you alert them someone has passed away / everybody's dead. Then they go and look.
So if you're planning to sell the property anyway, maybe running title is the path of least resistance.
Sure. And if you have a really complicated situation like that, then yes. But it would give me pause if they truly didn't know if any probate work had been done.
If they were like a first person involved in it, you'd be like, well, then probably not. If you were there. Now, if it was like mom who did grandma's probate stuff, then maybe you wouldn't necessarily be in the know.
Maybe.
But depending on the relationship, that would kind of give you a key. It's like, probably not. If it was like, if you were like, yeah, I was in charge of doing it, and you don't remember, that would be, probably not. So we need to move through that process.
Yeah, if you did the probate process and you don't remember, and you also didn't get the deed transferred after those letters were finally issued, then you potentially have capacity problems yourself.
Okay.
Which means maybe you shouldn't be signing anything legal.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so all right. So now that we started getting into the heavy stuff, let's do the fun stuff.
Okay.
And then we'll go through the process so you can kind of show us what's up.
So what probate is not?
What probate is not. I know that we had some interesting questions yesterday from some of my friends who do improv, who are very funny people, some awesome comedians. And they were. And I think we actually had a couple jokes that were repeated. So Ben, Paul, I'm like, wow. I guess the idea well is only so deep, right?
It's an interesting focus too. The ones that were repeated, they were.
Yeah, well, I mean, they
Kinda
were
one
definitely like.
track.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, once you get into your 30s, I think you're worried about certain health issues. So you're like, at what point is it gonna be, about that time? Mm-hmm. But yeah. Okay, so.
So I did pictures. I have visual aids.
We have visual aids.
It is not anything related to jail. Probate is not probation, right? This sounds super fun. This looks like Shawshank Redemption, doesn't it?
It
looked like that to me. How often do you look at a man's shoes?
Oh, almost never.
Oh, that's a line from the movie.
I know.
Okay. You want to do this?
Don't you dare
No, you do
question
this
my
one,
Shawshank
Jamie.
Redemption knowledge. How dare you? But I was just thinking about all the guys. Well, no, that's not true. At least two of the guys that were making jokes. I make fun of them because they have the same shoes.
Oh.
And actually, there's three of them. And the thing is I really considered getting those same shoes, but I can't because three people I know and hang out with quite often have those same shoes.
You have to be yourself.
Yeah, I gotta do me. Okay, so it is not, and I assume I've got comments in the way, but I assume you guys don't see that stuff on your end.
I don't know.
But,
it's a doctor. Probate has nothing to do with going to the doctor because you already did.
Yeah. Well, things didn't work out.
Things didn't work out.
You've been, but he wasn't helping. But yeah, because I know we had a lot of, I think we had some colonoscopy jokes that were thrown in there.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It is not anything to do with fishing. No bait of any type. It's not a bait and switch. It's not anything with fishing, really. I can't make a probate connection to that at all. Unless you died fishing.
Wow.
So morbid. Keep coming back to death.
Well, I mean,
Why
that's
is
kind
that?
of what we're talking about, but I feel like
is.
we may not be giving it its solemn.
It's due soberness.
Yes, that is true.
True.
Okay. I'm not 100%
You got the healthy
sure.
one. That is how to avoid ending up in probate when you have probiotics. It's like yogurt.
Yeah,
thing.
but I also think that this would be a good way to avoid this one.
I mean, they kind of go
I feel
hand
like
in hand,
these are helpful for each other because this is going to help you avoid both.
It is.
Both probate and other P words.
Right. So not probiotic, right? And it's also no prorations. It's not about prorations.
Because who said that one? Sarah did.
Yeah.
Sarah had the prorations.
I like it. That's a very real estate joke. It's a very real estate comment.
I know, right?
But we may prorate when we sell with the probate documents. But it's not the same.
You just blew minds. Hey, what's up, Orlando? What's going on, man? Yeah.
So what else? Do you want me to get some nitty gritty now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the probate process. Orlando, and your question, I don't think I answered it. I don't think I understood exactly what you were asking yesterday, so I don't know that my answer helped you a whole lot. But I will say that, yeah, what's up, bro? That probably the best way is, and I know this isn't the fun answer, that there is no shiny object that I think we'll be able to give you today to walk away with that you'll be able to use for acquisitions and stuff. But I think it's just one of those things where it's relationship building, which is so that you build those relationships to where when they have an opportunity to they've got someone that needs your help or my help or another investor, then have a relationship to where they trust us to help them purchase the property of the person that's going through the probate process. So I know that's probably not like the fun answer. They like get you some that makes you able to do some acquisitions right away. But I think that's the better answer is building those relationships. And also, Orlando, I'm going to send you my email because I think I may have some buyers if you've got some single family rentals down your way. But sorry. All right, moving on. You're on.
All right.
Madam Wasden.
What did I have? Okay, so the probate process, just some things that you should know. Do you need to probate? You got to do things like check the deed. Sometimes there are survivorship rights on there and you don't have to probate at all.
Ooh, is there a...
There was that.
Do
it's
I
going to be
need
backward,
to yeah,
but there it is.
Backwards. Pretend it's...
Yes.
I wonder if I could put enough light behind this that it would like... What's that? Oh, that it's backwards?
So I will say an attorney can answer that question best for you. But to know that that is a question, to check the deed and to know if there's a will or not, some of those things we've already talked about, is going to help answer this question, do you need to? Your closing attorney may or may not be able to answer that question for you as well. But the problem is if you get to that point where they've run title and you have a contract, it's going to be a little bit late. Because the probate process, I will say, in Georgia is relatively straightforward. It is not super expensive like some of those other states, but it's not fast and it is a little unpredictable. So if you've got something under contract that's going to close in 4 weeks or something, it may not make that deadline. So this is a good question to pose first.
I think he's not in Georgia, but do you know what the average time for probate to go to the representative?
It's at least a month. I would plan for at least a month, if not 2 or 3, but it depends on a lot of things because probate involves having to serve the heirs at law. So when you have a will, for example, mine, I have a husband and 2 kids. So I would need to serve them with copies of the will or whoever's probating it. And if I left everything to you in that will, that's my husband's chance to either make a claim on the estate or say it's a forgery or there was duress or something to try to disprove it.
And also, just to follow up with this, because I think it might be another good question, is that, what was I going to say? A contract of any kind can't be signed until it's done, correct?
Correct.
Because otherwise you don't know, because if there was a contract for the property and before the probate was done, and then when it's done and somebody actually has the authority to go under contract, then what does that other contract mean? It's signed by, even if it is signed by that person,
right.
Somebody would be like, hey, well, probate happened this date, the contract is predated, is before that, so how is this a valid contract? So it would need to go under contract after that date of whoever had authority to do any kind of signing for a contract. Is that right?
A short answer is yes. No, that is a really good point. I think you can address that in an amendment, and frequently you'll have people. I think you could essentially say this is the capacity and we mean it. If everybody agrees to it, then you're okay.
Okay. I feel like that's with a lot of things with real estate. As long as people, as long as everybody's moving forward in good faith, and everything is agreed upon in general, then I feel like you're okay.
Yeah, and that would be sort of later if your buyers learned that this person was not the nominated executor yet and wanted to use that to try to get out of it. I think they'd have a pretty strong argument. So it kind of goes either way. I should say that the probate process is from kind of lengthy and has a lot of pieces to it. The part we care about is finding out if we need to probate, filing the correct petition, which is going to be for administration if there's no will, and for executorship, essentially, if there is a will. Then the letters testamentary and the letters of administration are issued. That's kind of the piece that we're talking about. It does go on after that. They have to file certain things within the newspaper. They have to handle the administration of the estate. They have to file taxes and eventually close the estate. So when we say probate process, it really is a long one. But we care about the point where somebody is nominated with all of the powers that we need to sell real estate, to sign a contract, to sign a deed, to actually conduct the closing on behalf of the estate.
Okay, great. Do we have No, I think we did.
If you hear the term personal representative, that's actually an overarching term. You know how there's, this is a nerdy lawyer example. So you know how there's like Congress and there's Senate and House of Representatives, and the Congress means of both. That's like personal representative means executive administrator. It's all encompassing.
So is it a way of saying, of not getting into it? It's like the personal representative, whether it's, so that way you don't have to say, whether it's with, intestate or whatever, personal representative gets it covered without having to go into it that deep.
Yes, and a lot of other states use personal representative as meaning different things, but that's what that means here. Is both of them.
Yeah, Taylor, are you okay to do you want to do questions now, or you want to wait back for?
Yeah,
All right, so Taylor has a question. Does a house have to go through probate to be sold? I have a house in Louisiana that is worthless.
So Louisiana is an interesting example because they are on a totally different law system
Yeah,
than we
right.
are. So that's fascinating to me. If you were asking me that question in Georgia, and not specific legal advice in this video, I'll repeat, but it depends. Don't you love that lawyer answer? Oh man,
Yeah.
I just did it. So the first thing you do is look at the deed. If there are survivorship rights on the deed, I don't know if they have those in Louisiana the same way we do. But if we bought an investment property together and we were on there as joint tenants with right of survivorship, my will says that my husband gets everything. He wouldn't get that property because on the deed itself, it transfers to you.
Okay.
Outside of what the will says and outside of probate is what we call. And that's where the trust works as well. When everything goes through the trust, it goes outside of probate. So we don't have a probate estate to really deal with. So if you don't have any survivorship rights, then you look at who is truly on the vesting deed. Sometimes that's a surprise. Sometimes you're dealing with mom and they forgot, they dealt with dad's estate, but it was really just everybody was surviving each other. And they never really handled a probate of dad's estate, but they didn't have to because she lived there and it hasn't come up yet. So, or they've even forgotten or didn't really pay attention that he was still on the title to the house. So some of those things come up. So check the deed for that as well. Who is it actually vested in and are there survivorship rights? And then the answer here in Georgia is if all of that is no, we just have title vested in someone who's passed away, then yes, we have to deal somehow with their estate through probate.
Okay, so I think what he was saying is he's purchasing the property. And he wants to know if they've gone through probate. And he's like, and if not, is he able to put it under contract with all of the siblings? I guess but I guess that's assuming those siblings would be the ones that are inheriting it. So we're not really sure. So
right.
I guess what he's asking is, does he have to do a title search to get that information?
Well, for any contract, you want to know how the property is held. I mean, you all should all be, in my opinion, looking at the deeds before you put a contract in anyway, because it happens where there's an ex on there or other siblings or things like that. So you would want to know how the property is held to begin with before you put a contract on any property.
Yeah, certainly, because I mean, what if there's an ex and they've gone through all the divorce stuff, but there just wasn't a quitclaim done
Happens
or whatever
all
it
the time.
was.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really just getting paperwork done, but it makes a big impact. So
yeah.
So I guess
find
you just
out
need to
who's
pull
on the title and
pull
then
the deed, yeah, and see.
And if someone there has passed away and the probate hasn't happened yet, there really doesn't exist anyone who can sign a contract to bind that property. If you wanted to have a type of agreement and everybody who's involved and it's just a matter of paperwork, and that's kind of a big no. People will be untruthful with you about the sibling they want to cut out and some of that. That's a little bit the problem for the attorney, but if they're using one, that's part of our job is to figure all that out. But there really doesn't exist a person who can sign a super binding contract.
So would he be able to get all the people he thinks are involved to sign a contract, to put it under contract,
You could
and
try,
then work through the
but
process? And then if it turns out that something else, other paperwork needed to be done, or do a new contract with the actual, or if two of them instead of four or whatever it is
Right.
actually needed to sign, then maybe do it at that point.
I think it's kind of a judgment call on the facts of each individual situation, because whether or not you have all the siblings sign or two of them or whatever, the fact remains that there isn't anybody who would have the legal
Authority,
standing.
yeah.
The
The personal representative hasn't been established yet.
Right.
So so essentially, Taylor, check out the deed, and then if whoever should have ownership per the deed is deceased, then title check.
Well, and figure out if they've done probate. Just figure out the story.
Yeah.
And that's why we do what we do.
Deed,
Every
and then
piece of property has a story.
probate to see who has it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, if there's two takeaways from this video, it's one, this is not legal advice, and two, make sure your loved ones are doing estate planning and you are doing estate planning.
Yes. Also, if you do find...
how do you find the deed? In Georgia, it would be it would be in a system that we have here with with a long acronym.
Yes.
But in Louisiana, I'm not sure. I don't know. So maybe
in Georgia, it's a public record system where everything that's filed related to property is public in our records, in the deed rooms of every county, not unlike the
worst case scenario, go to the courthouse, right? Because it's got to be filed there. It's got to be recorded.
I don't know if it's the same way in every state in Georgia, but
assuming it's not just like you feed it to an alligator.
State of USA, besides feed it to an alligator.
Oh, good point. Yeah, I mean in Louisiana, I don't know what you guys are doing down there. You feed it to an alligator and just wait for it to swim. Yeah, you stuff it into a king cake and you don't eat it until later. But
and in Georgia, I also say you can always contact your closing attorney. I pull deeds for people all the time, and that's a good time to do a little check down too. See if there's any surprises on the deed, and if there's any surprise liens while you're in there. You do a quick lien search. See if there's any HOA stuff, any credit card stuff, any unpleasantness hanging out there. It's always good to know that.
Yeah.
So, what did I have? Oh, lead generation. We had a question about that yesterday, and that is, like Eric was saying, just a relationship building type of thing. Can probate attorneys feed you leads? Yes and no. They're going to be a little more squirrely about their relationships with their clients and confidentiality.
Well, yeah, because they have a fiduciary responsibility to one party, so it's building a relationship to where you are the best option, or you're the most you're someone that can help.
It never hurts to be in someone's bag of tricks, as it were, and somebody that can help in that scenario. If you want to locate executors, personal representatives, estates that are open that may need your help without going through attorneys, there are some places that you can check that. Well, the probate is a public process, right? So you can go and check the open estates that way. The problem is they're not online for most of the metro area, Atlanta County. So it's a trip to the courthouse, which of course I think is fascinating and I love going, but I'm a nerd, so there's that. And there are some newspaper advertisement type of things that need to happen with various types of estates, so you can check some of those sometimes. You can always inquire further about that, but it's difficult to, as far as I know, there's not really a list out there that gets churned out that is accessible of, these are the executors that got nominated this week, or, these are the letters of administration that got issued this week. It's kind of a labor-intensive process, but that's not to say that you can't go and find some information out there that may lead you to some people who need you.
Perfect. Yeah. What's our next thing? I love all your aids that you have. That's genius.
That's good. All right. I think we touched on how long it will take. Setting expectations is important for that. Yep. Like I said, if you've already got it under contract, it may be problematic for the length of time. But I find the more you can just set expectations with people, the better that it is. And then how do they learn
Sweet.
more?
Awesome, Orlando.
I should mention briefly also, I have a real estate school. I do this in my practice. I do closings and then I do probate as well, but I do have a real estate school and I'm developing a probate CE course that I'm going to start offering maybe next month. I'm working on it. So you can always link up with me on social media. I'll post those
we'll
events.
Put our contact information in the comments, guys, so that way if you need to speak with me, if you know somebody that is looking to sell a house, then I'll be happy to help them out with it. Oh, what's up, Tammy? How you doing? And then she's selling a house in Florida right now, I think.
Oh, cool.
But yeah.
All right. Okay. Did we address the serious stuff?
Yeah, I think
the jokes.
Well, we got the jokes. We did the serious process. Oh, I know there was like a pop quiz hot shot kind of question in there.
Yes.
And that was from Ben, who I think he's a closer at an attorney's office, and also he's from Memphis, and I think he has a relative who's in the band Shinedown, who's from Memphis, and for my money, one of the best versions of A Simple Man I have ever heard.
Oh, how about that?
I know that was a long way to go and probably not worth the journey, but I wanted to mention it.
I liked his question because it was a very good example of why blended families need estate planning even more a little bit than a more traditional family.
Well, I feel like that's like a laydown for you. I feel like the question was to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
It was the response, and I don't remember who replied, but it seemed correct to me. The hypothetical was...
Yeah, that was Pavel. He's an agent friend of mine in Seattle.
Oh.
Well, he's a broker. He has a bunch of businesses. He's killing it out there.
One of those,
doing his
huh?
thing. Yeah, he has a VA company for virtual assistants. He has a brokerage, and I don't know. I'm sure he's opening another business every month
right
or
now.
something. Yeah, yeah. He's just like a captain of industry.
Oh, that's great. So, as I remember, the question was a husband and wife, and they each had a child, where the other was not the parent.
Yeah, from a previous marriage. Yeah.
And they died not simultaneously, a couple of weeks apart. And I think it was the husband that died first, and then the wife died. And there are a lot of factors to that. Obviously, there's different things that can come into play. But if there was no will, it was interesting though. The question was about the house with joint tenancy, and that is easily answered. Period. End. It would go 100% to either spouse if they do have joint tenancy. It doesn't matter if they have a will or not. It doesn't matter about the kids. That's part of the pitfall of blended family planning, because you can inadvertently disinherit your kids. If you leave everything to the spouse, then your child is not their child in the law's eyes the same way. So
does it change if they were to adopt them?
Yes.
Like legally? Would that make them, would the law treat them as if they were a blood child?
Yes.
Interesting.
But that's not the norm. It certainly occurs, but when there's another parent involved, people aren't, fans of giving up their parental rights to let the other step dad or mom adopt them.
Oh, so in order to adopt, the biological father or mother would have to give up their parental rights in order they couldn't have three parents?
I'm not a family attorney. I don't really do adoptions, but my understanding is that's not really a thing. The three-parent thing, and that actually touches a little bit on LGBTQ community stuff, because they'll have two moms and a dad.
Sure.
And they're trying to work on birth certificates and all that stuff to include three people. That's like way off of probate, but that's just a little...
That's still interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people that doesn't happen. Either they don't do it or they just don't get around to doing the adoption process. So blended families are complicated. But the joint tenancy would have the house automatically pass between the two, which is great, usually how they want it to go. And then I don't remember if his question was who gets the house, but essentially who gets after. If the husband dies first or the wife dies a couple weeks later, then her child would be the only heir of her estate, and his child would not be. So,
yeah, and I knew that. I let other people answer it because I didn't want to be that know-it-all. Yeah, Papa kind of jumped the gun. He was in there, man. But okay. Do we have?
I think that's all I had.
Awesome.
And all my little flashcards.
Sweet. All right. Well, thanks so much. The best way to contact you is going to be like an email or a call.
Sure.
We'll have you like comment or I'll comment and put your contact information in there.
Yeah.
Hey, Orlando, let's link up later on, man. I want to discuss further and make sure you have my contact info. And then for me, as far as contacting me, you can shoot me as I hit the table and shake the phone. There was an earthquake. Contacting me, you can send me a private message. You can, I'll put my contact information in the comments. And I'm an investor, so I'm always looking to purchase property. So if you know somebody that's going through probate, or anybody that needs to sell a house, just let me know. Otherwise, I'm always happy to help whatever that may be. And then I was thinking about Zephyr, because she was the one that asked about knowing about the whole process, because she's got a couple clients she's going through it. So contact me, Zephyr. I got offers for you. And then hopefully this helped. If you need further help, then give me a shout or contact Nancy, and we'll be happy to help. All right, hope this was helpful, guys. Yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and sign up.
Good stuff. Yeah.
All right, high five.
All right.
Boom.
Thank you.